Okay guys, so I'm going to be drawing in my basic facial shape here and my hair. So you'll see me kind of going back and forth with between the picture and the drawing. So what I'm doing is I'm marking out that halfway point in that 1-inch square and using that as a basic guide to figure out where each facial feature or object that I'm drawing is at within that 1-inch square. So you'll see me kind of using my pencil as well to find out where that halfway point is to use the facial guidelines. And then also finding that center area of your face. And then now I'm going to be going through and again using those halfway points that are in each square to find out where exactly the facial proportions lie within that square. And then I'm going to go back through and draw in the facial features as I see them. You might try to draw lightly at this step because depending on what media you're using, it may be shining through. For example, if you're using colored pencil, you would be seeing a lot of the graphite if you're not careful. At this point, I also extended past my grid lines a little bit just to make sense of it because I didn't want to dramatically stop at the edge of my shoulder, so I just went ahead and continued it on to the bottom of the surface. Okay, and once you are finished drawing in all the details that you want in your drawing, then you're going to go back in and erase your grid lines and or facial proportion guidelines. Okay, so here I'm going to be using fluid acrylics. These are something that are kind of expensive, so you're probably not going to have them, but what you can do is use watercolor in a very similar manner. So if you want them to be as kind of the bright and vivid colors that you're seeing here, just make sure that you add more of your watercolor pigment and it will keep making it darker. So I had initially planned to use acrylic paint for the face, but I decided last minute to change it to colored pencil since it's more likely something you have at home. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the colors that I have, which the first layer was going to be the magenta colored pencil that kind of creates those dark or the reddish undertones that are in my face. And you can see I just did it in a few areas. Then I went through and I colored in the iris. And then now I'm kind of going in and coloring in the sclera, which is the white part of the eye with the gray and the white. And then here at this point, I switched over to soft pastels. So I used that peach color first, and then I used the light tan brown. And then I added water to move it around, but you can see that it also creates a kind of a softer look so that it will blend in together. So at this point, I use the magenta again to fill in some color in my lips because they kind of have that pinkish hue to them. And I'm also using that peach color. It's kind of a beige pink peach colored pencil, but I'm kind of just layering in colors that are kind of creating the volume of the lips. And then I go through and the areas that are receding in space, so going backwards, those I'm using that darker gray and black, a little bit of black, but it kind of helps push it back into space. And then with the beige colored pencil, I'm going back over and blending in, kind of adding another layer of on top of that pastel that I had, and it kind of makes the face a little bit softer, but also adds more color to it and helps blend in what I already have there. I'm using a brown to go back through and add in the shadow areas. So I'm doing this very, very lightly and it's just to kind of give that little bit more depth and the volume to it. Then you see me go back through with the beige pencil and I blend that in again, and then using the white to cover the areas that are highlights, kind of just going back through looking at my reference photo and adding in those areas of where I'm seeing that there need to be more in shadow or more in highlight, and adding that. Okay, and here you're seeing me add in more of the soft pastel and coloring in the hair using the dark brown. And here is where I'm going to pick up the colored pencils again. I start with a black to help push the values darker, and as I'm doing it, I'm making sure that I am actually doing single strokes that are going to give the idea that this is hair. So you see me kind of just going around and adding more color to it and creating some depth in there by adding certain areas that are darker, and then where my ponytail, the bun is at, you can see that it kind of comes to there to make it stop. And then you can start seeing that the hair that's in the bun is going to have the curvature of it, okay? So it depends on what your hairstyle is going to be like, but you want to make sure that you do those single quick strokes that are going to create the illusion of hair. I also went through with brown and then finally some highlights at the end you saw with the white colored pencil. There I'm just kind of creating the little idea of the baby hairs that are kind of at your hairline. It kind of softens it so that it's not such a dramatic line. And then I kind of go back through and add in more shadows because I felt like I could still push those values a little bit further. And then again, using that beige colored pencil to help blend those in. At this point, I'm kind of going through my picture and just looking at each area and seeing what needs to be pushed further as far as values, making them darker, or if I need to bring out highlights and kind of adding in those midtones, and just kind of looking to see what needs to be pushed further to make it be able to pop a little bit more, and trying to create the idea of the realistic look. Here I picked up a white gel pen that I have that I wanted to be able to have the highlight in my eye stand out a little bit more, as well as the white colored pencil wasn't doing it as the highlights quite as well as I wanted them to. So I went over this. It was working partially, but sometimes whenever you have that waxy substance, the gel pens don't want to go onto the surface. But so I went through and added those highlights where I saw that they needed to be on the face as well as in my hair. Here is where I switched to acrylic paint. So I decided to use acrylic for my apron and the t-shirt. So you'll see me go through with the green for the apron and then pink for the t-shirt. I'm adding a second layer because it wasn't quite opaque enough for me. So if you happen to find that if you use acrylic paints and it's a little bit more transparent, then you can just add a second coat and it'll help the opacity of it. Here I went through with a darker green just to kind of have a little bit of the shadow areas in my picture on the apron, because the left side of me is going to be in shadow, so I went through and added that as well. Here's where I used two pinks, a darker pink and a lighter pink, and blended those together to create a pink that's similar to my shirt color. And then I just went through and did the first basic coat on the shirt before I went ahead and added a few extra details of the highlights and the shadows in the shirt. So disclaimer here, colored pencil is not my favorite medium and is not one that I use on a regular basis. So this portrait is not the best one I've ever done, but considering the fact that it only took me 3 hours compared to the normal 35 plus hours for a realistic portrait. Considering that the Mod Podge did not create a lot of tooth on the surface, and for it to be able to stick to and to be able to add more layers to it, I don't think that it's too bad in regards to that, so I'll be happy with it. Okay, so here I went through and darkened my eyebrows to bring them to the value that they should be. Okay, so here you're going to see me going back through again and touching up areas that I feel like need to be pushed a little bit darker, or that the highlights need to be brought out a little bit more, or just it needs to be blended a little bit more. So again, this will be the point where you're kind of just going back in and touching up the areas that needed the attention and kind of stepping back from it, looking to see what you can push further. Here I am using turquoise acrylic paint and bubble wrap to use as a stamping tool to create the circles on my shirt. I then used a fine liner pen to go through and just to kind of bring a little bit more emphasis to some of the circles. So I went through and drew a circle around those, and then I also used the white gel pen and did the same, but sometimes with different circles or sometimes with the same, just kind of creating some textural appearances in my t-shirt. Okay, and here is the final portrait. So now it is your turn. Have fun and good luck!